Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. So today we're going to be diving into the world of cybersecurity, but more specifically, a fascinating look into hack-for-hire operations. And the really interesting part is that these are based in India. So our source material today is an investigative report. It's a joint investigation by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism and the Sunday Times. And they used undercover reporters, they got their hands on some leaked databases, and it's really quite the story. So what we're going to try to do is kind of unravel how this whole industry works. We want to identify who some of the major players are and what kind of impact they're having. And I think you'll find that there are some twists and turns along the way.
Yeah, what strikes me is that this isn't just about small-time hacks, right? We're really delving into corporate espionage. We're looking at manipulation in the political sphere. And there are even these hints of possible connections to unsolved murders. So this is a really big deal.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics. How did India become such a hub for this type of activity?
Well, one key factor is the whole discussion surrounding the enforcement of cyber laws there. Some experts suggest that it hasn't kept pace with the rapid growth of this industry. And that might be making it a bit of a haven for international clients who are seeking to, operate discreetly.
So it's like a blend of a skilled workforce and a legal landscape that might be seen as more lenient. And that kind of creates this perfect storm for this industry to thrive. Now, one of the names that keeps popping up in this investigation is Appin. So they initially presented themselves as an ethical hacking training company. But the report alleges that behind the scenes, they were actually involved in some pretty shady stuff. Illegal hacking for clients all over the globe.
Yeah, it's quite ironic when you say Appin was even accepted into a UK government entrepreneur program. Talk about a wolf in sheep's clothing, right?
Oh, it gets even wilder. There's also this whole other story about Appin's alleged involvement in hacking individuals. And these were individuals who were critical of Qatar. We won't dive into the details of that specific case today, but it really does just add another layer to this whole operation. And here's the thing. When Appin's activities came to light, their employees didn't just vanish. Instead, they scattered and formed new hacking companies. So it makes the whole industry even more difficult to track.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's almost like a hydra. You cut off one head and two more spring up in its place. And this makes it incredibly challenging, right, to track down and prosecute these individuals. It also speaks to the resilience of this industry, its ability to adapt and thrive even when exposed.
So it's clear that this industry is a lot more complex than it might seem on the surface. It's not just a few lone hackers working in isolation. It's an entire network. And it's constantly shifting and adapting. So now let's delve into some of the individuals behind these operations. The report features a young Indian hacker named Pechin Rathore. And this is where it gets really interesting. He confessed extensively to these undercover reporters.
Yeah, this is where the report truly becomes captivating, because Rathore's story provides this firsthand account of the inner workings of this industry, and it kind of makes you wonder, what motivates these hackers? What are the moral dilemmas that they grapple with? These are questions that his story really helps us explore.
So his story is quite a journey. Rathore started in ethical hacking, but he actually found the more aggressive, offensive side of the business, as he called it. He found that to be much more financially rewarding, and he was very open about his past activities. He talked about hacking for a winemaker who wanted to spy on her husband. And he even claimed to have been involved in the unsolved murder of Canadian billionaire Barry Sherman.
Yeah, and this raises a really important question about accountability. To what extent are these hackers responsible for the consequences of their actions, right? Are they merely tools? Or are they actively participating in these schemes? It's a very complex issue.
It's definitely a gray area.
Sure.
Now, Rather also highlighted the significant involvement of British clients in this industry. He even worked for a London-based corporate intelligence firm and a British politician, although their names weren't revealed in the report. But this suggests a much broader global reach than we might initially imagine.
Absolutely. And speaking of international connections, it's important to note that Rathore wasn't just relying on sophisticated hacking techniques. He described using phishing emails that were disguised as Facebook login pages. He was exploiting the common habit of password reuse across platforms.
So it was a mix of technical skills and exploiting human behavior.
Exactly. He also employed what are called as social engineering tactics. So he would create these fake online personas after doing meticulous research in order to gain his target's trust. And it really highlights how cybersecurity isn't just about firewalls and encryption. It's about understanding human psychology, understanding our vulnerabilities, and how trust can be so easily manipulated.
It's a sobering reminder that we all leave digital footprints, and those footprints can be used against us. Now, another hacker featured in the report is a guy named Utkarsh Bhargava, and he claims to have worked for an Indian Homeland Security company. And this company, he says, was engaged in state-sponsored hacking. So now we're getting into some serious cloak and dagger stuff.
Right. It introduces a whole new level of complexity because it suggests that hacking isn't just about personal gain anymore. It's a tool that's being employed in these geopolitical conflicts. And it raises questions about the ethics of state-sponsored cyber warfare and its potential consequences, right?
Absolutely. So Bhargava claimed that his targets included governments like Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, and Cambodia. He even mentioned being trained at, you guessed it, Appen, and observing their work in the Middle East, where he said they took anything and everything.
It's a disturbing thought, isn't it? If true, it really points toward a blurring of the lines between government espionage and for-profit hacking, and it also raises concerns about the potential misuse of these technologies, beyond matters of national security. Where do we draw the line?
That's a very slippery slope for sure. Bhargava also shared some insights into his transition to the private sector, where he was working for various clients around the world. He talked about cloning websites like the UK's National Health Service to steal login credentials.
Right. So this is a classic example of phishing, a tactic that relies on deception to trick people into giving up sensitive information. And it's a stark reminder of how crucial it is to be cautious online. Always scrutinize those links you get. Double-check website addresses before you enter any personal information. And be wary of anything that just seems off.
So basically just be skeptical and double-check everything. And I guess that applies to messages that seem to come from friends or family too, right? Because sometimes hackers try to impersonate people we know.
Absolutely. Hackers can be very convincing, so if a message from a friend or family member seems out of character or asks for something unusual, don't hesitate to reach out to them directly through a different channel just to verify.
Okay, so trust but verify. Got it. He also talked about strategically targeting individuals during specific times when they were less likely to be using their phones, like prayer times for devout Muslims. And get this, Bhargava even claimed to have access to Pegasus spyware.
No, Pegasus is a military-grade spyware tool. It can remotely access virtually everything on your phone, including your encrypted messages. It's been linked to government surveillance and human rights abuses globally. And it's a chilling example of how powerful these technologies are and the potential for misuse in the wrong hands.
It really makes you wonder who else might have access to this kind of technology and what they're using it for. Now, both Rathore and Bhargava later denied involvement in hacking, which is understandable given the potential legal ramifications. But the reporters actually had video evidence of their confessions.
Right, and their denials highlight the challenges of investigating these cybercrimes, because often it becomes a case of he said, she said, with limited tangible evidence, and plenty of denials and attempts to obscure the truth. It demands thorough documentation persistence and a willingness to go undercover to really get to the bottom of it.
Okay, so we've met a couple of hackers. But what about those who operate in the shadows, the people pulling the strings? Well, the reporters also met with Brigadier Ram Chiller. He's a former commander of the Indian Army's intelligence unit, and he now runs a company called Phronesis. During their meeting, Chiller was incredibly cautious, but he did admit to obtaining personal data, including passwords from the dark web.
Right. So this brings us to the dark underbelly of the internet. These shadowy marketplaces where stolen data is traded like a commodity. And it's a stark reminder that our personal information is valuable, and that we need to be proactive in protecting it.
Absolutely. Chiller also mentioned having UK-based clients and connections to London corporate intelligence firms. And while he insisted he wouldn't support hacking, his admission about obtaining passwords definitely raises some eyebrows.
It does. It makes you question the legitimacy of these corporate intelligence firms and the methods they might be employing. It highlights the need for greater transparency and accountability in an industry that often operates in a legal and ethical gray zone.
So we're seeing this web of connections here, from individual hackers to corporate intelligence firms, and even hints of government involvement. It's getting more and more intriguing. The reporters also attempted to contact a company called Cyberroot. They had been accused of working for a British investigator in a legal case that involved hacking.
Cyberroot is an interesting case because the reporters actually visited their office, and they managed to catch a glimpse of this room. It was filled with computers and busy workers, almost like a scene from a movie. It provides this tantalizing peek into the scale of these operations.
It does make you think, are we talking about these sophisticated hacking factories churning out these cyber attacks on a global scale? What kind of resources and organization are behind this? It's pretty unsettling.
It certainly raises questions, right? Is this industry a loose network of individual actors? Or are there these more structured, even corporate-like entities at play? And how much coordination is happening across borders?
Yeah, it feels like we're peeling back the layers of an onion, and each layer reveals something even more perplexing. And remember, this report is focused on India, but this is a global phenomenon. Similar operations likely exist in other countries as well, in countries with the right combination of tech talent and maybe less stringent legal frameworks.
That's a crucial point. This isn't just an isolated issue. We're talking about a global network with tentacles reaching far and wide. And it begs the question, how do we even begin to tackle a problem of this magnitude?
That's what we'll be digging into next. But Cyberroot, like many others, denied any involvement in hacking. But the fact that the reporters saw what they saw adds another layer of intrigue.
Right. Their denial underscores the difficulty of holding these individuals and companies accountable. They operate in this world of anonymity. They're using tools like VPNs, fake identities, and all these other techniques to cover their tracks. It's this constant game of cat and mouse for law enforcement agencies that are trying to keep up.
It's a daunting challenge. So where do we go from here? What does all of this mean for us, the everyday users of the internet? How do we navigate this increasingly complex and potentially dangerous digital world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This report pulls back the curtain on the vulnerabilities we all face in this digital age. Our emails, our social media accounts, our financial data, it's all potentially at risk.
It's enough to make you want to unplug and retreat to a secluded cabin in the woods.
Right.
But realistically, that's not an option for most of us. So what can we do to protect ourselves?
Disconnecting entirely isn't a practical solution for most people, you're right. But instead of fear, let's focus on empowerment. I think the key is awareness. Understanding the threats, recognizing the potential dangers, and then taking steps to protect ourselves. That's where true power lies. It's about shifting our mindset, From feeling helpless to feeling empowered, we can take control of our digital lives and make these informed choices to minimize risks.
Okay, so let's talk about those choices.
Yeah.
What concrete steps can we take to protect ourselves? I know there's a lot of advice out there,
Yeah.
but what are the most crucial things that people should be focusing on?
You're right, there's a lot of information. It can be overwhelming. But let's break it down into manageable steps. First and foremost, strong, unique passwords for every single online account are absolutely non-negotiable. I know it sounds like a hassle, but password managers can be lifesavers here. They help you generate and store those complex passwords so you don't have to remember them all.
Yeah, I use one and it's been a game changer. No more trying to remember dozens of variations of the same password.
Exactly. Another essential step is enabling two-factor authentication wherever it's offered. This adds an extra layer of security to your accounts. So even if someone gets hold of your password, they'll still need that second factor, usually a code sent to your phone or email to get in. It makes it much harder for hackers to gain access.
So it's like having a double lock on your digital door. Makes sense. What else?
Be cautious about phishing emails and any links that seem suspicious. Don't click on anything that raises even the slightest doubt. Verify the sender's email address. Hover over links to see where they actually lead. And if you're unsure, contact the organization directly through their official website or phone number. It's always better to be safe than sorry.
So it's all about being skeptical and double-checking everything. I guess that applies to messages that seem to come from friends or family too.
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes hackers try to impersonate people we know.
You're absolutely right. Hackers can be very convincing. So if a message from a friend or family member seems out of character or asks for something unusual, don't hesitate to reach out to them directly through a different channel just to verify.
Got it. Trust but verify. Okay, so strong passwords, two-factor authentication, and being wary of phishing. Those are some great starting points. But let's face it, no system is completely foolproof. Even the most careful person can fall victim to a sophisticated attack. So it's more about minimizing risk. Right?
Absolutely. It's about understanding that absolute security is probably unattainable, but we can certainly stack the odds in our favor. Think of it as digital hygiene. Just like we wash our hands to prevent the spread of germs, we need to adopt these good digital habits to minimize our risk online. It's an ongoing process, not a one-time fix.
That's a great analogy. So we need to be proactive and informed. But it's not all on us, is it?
Yeah.
What about the role of governments and law enforcement? What can they do to tackle this global network of hack-for-hire operations?
That's a complex question. I think it requires a multifaceted approach. We need stronger international cooperation, tighter laws and regulations, and increased investment in cybersecurity infrastructure and expertise. It's about closing legal loopholes, fostering collaboration between countries, and holding perpetrators accountable regardless of their location.
So it's a global problem that requires a global solution.
Exactly. We need governments to step up, work together, and take this threat seriously. It's not just about protecting data. It's about safeguarding national security, maintaining economic stability, and upholding the fundamental right to privacy.
It's a lot bigger than just our individual accounts, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about the fabric of our society, our trust in institutions, our very way of life. What about the role of tech companies? What can they do to help?
Well, tech companies have a huge responsibility here. They need to prioritize building more secure systems, implement robust security measures by default, and cooperate fully with law enforcement agencies to track down these criminals.
So it's a shared responsibility. We need individuals to be vigilant, governments to step up, and tech companies to build better systems and collaborate in taking down these networks.
That's right. We all have a role to play in building a safer digital world.
It's interesting how this whole conversation started with, hackers in India, and now we're talking about global solutions and the future of the internet. It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
It does, doesn't it? This isn't just a problem for governments or corporations, it's a problem for all of us. It affects everyone who uses the internet.
This report has been quite a journey, and it's a bit unnerving to think about the scale of this industry. But I also feel this sense of urgency, a need to act, to do something. What's the one thing you would recommend that people do after listening to this? Something they can do right now?
That's a great question. I think the most powerful action we can take is to start a conversation. Talk to your family, your friends, your colleagues about these issues. Share this report, discuss the implications, and brainstorm ways to protect yourselves and each other. The more we talk about this, the more awareness we raise, and the more pressure we put on those in power to address this growing threat.
I love that. So it's about turning awareness into action, right? Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
But it's only truly powerful when we share it and use it to make positive changes.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that this isn't about living in fear. It's about being informed, being proactive, and taking control of our digital lives. It's about creating a more secure and ethical online world for ourselves and for generations to come.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the murky world of hack-for-hire operations, delved into the tactics used by these individuals, and discussed steps we can take to protect ourselves. We've also touched on the broader implications of this industry and the need for collective action.
It's been a deep dive in the truest sense of the word.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought, something to ponder as they navigate their digital lives.
Okay, how about this? What's one small change you can make today to improve your own online security? It could be anything from updating your passwords, to enabling two-factor authentication, to simply being more mindful of what you click on and share. Every little step makes a difference.
That's a great question to leave everyone with. On that note, I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of hack for hire. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe online. Okay, so we've spent some time now exploring this really complex world of hack-for-hire operations. And we've talked about the global scale and impact of this industry. But now I think it's time to get a little bit more practical. Let's talk about some of the specific tactics that these hackers use, and most importantly, what you can do to protect yourself.
Yeah, it's crucial to remember that these hackers are constantly evolving. They're always adapting their techniques to stay one step ahead, But there are some common tactics that we can definitely shed some light on. One of the most prevalent ones is phishing. And this is all about tricking you into giving up sensitive information, like your passwords or credit card details. You might get an email that looks exactly like it's from your bank, or a social media message that's, urging you to click on a link.
Yeah, we've all seen those, haven't we? The ones with the kind of strange wording, or the sender address is just slightly off. Sometimes they're really easy to spot. But like you said, they're getting more and more sophisticated all the time.
Absolutely. And they might even use information that they've gathered about you from social media or other sources to personalize the phishing attempt and make it seem even more convincing. So that's why it's so important to be extra vigilant.
Yeah.
Question everything. Don't click on any links or download attachments unless you're completely sure that they're legitimate.
So a healthy dose of skepticism is key. Maybe even a bit of paranoia when you say, don't trust anything blindly, even if it looks like it's from your grandma.
Well, maybe not quite that extreme, but you're right. It's always better to err on the side of caution. Now, another tactic they use is malware. Think of it like a digital Trojan horse. It's this malicious software that's designed to sneak onto your device, often disguised as something harmless, and then wreak havoc once it's inside. It can steal your data, spy on your activity, or even take control of your device completely.
So that free game app you downloaded could actually be a gateway for hackers to access your entire digital life.
It's definitely a possibility, and one that we need to be very aware of. That's why having a good antivirus program is crucial. And always be cautious about what you download. Stick to trusted sources like the official app stores.
Got it. Antivirus software and App Store vigilance. What else should we be on the lookout for?
Well, social engineering is another common tactic. This is all about manipulating people, playing on their emotions or their trust, to get them to reveal information or do things that compromise their security. It could involve impersonating someone you trust, creating fake social media profiles, or even just using charm and persuasion to get what they want.
So it's not always about, high-tech hacking skills. Sometimes it's just good old-fashioned con artistry. That's pretty scary to think about.
It is. That's why it's so important to be aware of these tactics. Be cautious about who you trust online. Never share sensitive information unless you are absolutely sure of the other person's identity and their intentions. If something feels off, trust your instincts.
Okay, so we've got phishing, malware, social engineering. It's a lot to keep track of. But it sounds like a lot of these threats can be mitigated by taking some pretty basic precautions. What would you say are the most important steps people can take to protect themselves?
Yeah, you're right. A few simple steps can go a long way. We've talked about strong, unique passwords for every online account, enabling two-factor authentication whenever possible. But it's also crucial to be cautious about suspicious links and downloads, as we discussed. And keep your software and your devices up to date. Those updates often include security patches that address known vulnerabilities, so ignoring them is like leaving your front door unlocked.
So it's like developing these good digital hygiene habits, just like washing our hands regularly to prevent the spread of germs. We need to be mindful of our online hygiene to stay safe.
That's a great analogy. And just like physical hygiene, digital hygiene is an ongoing process, not a one-time fix. The threat landscape is always evolving, so we need to stay informed and adapt our defenses accordingly.
Well, this deep dive has certainly been eye-opening. It's exposed a side of the internet that most of us probably weren't aware of. But it's also empowered us, I think, with the knowledge and the practical tools to protect ourselves.
I agree. Knowledge is power. And in this case, it can be the key to safeguarding our privacy, our security, and our entire digital lives.
So as we wrap up this episode, what's the one message you want our listeners to take away? What's the most important thing to remember?
I think the most crucial takeaway is this. Don't be complacent. This threat is real, it's evolving, and it affects us all. But we're not powerless. By being proactive, informed, and vigilant, we can significantly reduce our risk and create a safer online environment for ourselves and for future generations.
Well said. It's not about living in fear, it's about being empowered. It's about taking control of our digital lives and working together to shape a more secure and ethical online world.
Exactly. It all starts with each of us.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Hack for Hire. We hope you found it informative and empowering. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe out there.